So I was 24 years old and I was living my dream life, my personal dream life, playing with the greatest rugby players in the world for the most successful franchise in history. I had an amazing wife, Laura, just over there, and I've had two beautiful little daughters, Shyla and Mylia. But things were about to change for us, a pretty significant change. So Laura was diagnosed with a thing called multiple sclerosis, a really aggressive form of multiple sclerosis, and we were told that life would never ever be the same again for her. And it was a brutal sort of thing to hear, and yeah, it was brutal. The reality is, guys, I know everyone in this room are high performers. You know, you're here for a reason, you're here to try and get better. And so for me today, what I really want to do is sort of teach you lessons, or teach is probably the wrong word, like tell you some of the lessons that I learned through my career, the things that helped me perform and get better. There's three real key things that I want you guys to take away. The three key learnings for me really are, one, the importance of making mistakes, so genuinely leaning into mistakes. We good? We got me? Sweet, okay. So, there's three things, did you hear me? Three things? Three things I want you to take from today. So the first one is the importance of making mistakes, of leaning into challenges, being prepared to fail. I'm sure you guys can resonate with that. The second one really is around the importance of being present in a moment, because life is made up of tiny, small moments stacked up over time. And the third one really is the importance of learning to enjoy the journey. You know, I know there's challenging times in every industry, but learning to try and enjoy the journey right the way through are the three key things that I really want you guys to take away from today. So I grew up in a tiny town on the west coast of the South Island. Has anyone heard of Gloriavale before? It's not Gloriavale, I promise, but very close to Gloriavale, to be honest. It was about 10 minutes down the road from there. And at my whole school, there were 12 of us, for starters. My older brother, my older sister, myself, my little brother. Mum was our teacher and our dad was the principal. So I pretty much was a little bit like Gloriavale, probably, without all the religious side of it. But it was an awesome way to sort of grow up. It was, we just lived outside, had a lot of fun. Sort of characterising my upbringing really was a combination of sort of pressure and care. High pressure, high care was the way I'd sort of describe it. And that's actually shaped the way I've sort of done everything since then as well. I put a lot of pressure on myself, but I also try and really look after myself at the same time, because I think those two things are the sort of key part to perform over a long period of time. So I did my first few years at Greymouth High School. Anyone been to Greymouth? Anyone from Greymouth? Oh, a couple of legends in the room. So I did my first few years at Greymouth High School, and it was interesting. And anyone that's got teenagers here or remembers being a teenager, it's a sort of a challenging time, really. But, you know, you're starting to sort of make some bad decisions. I was certainly starting to make some bad decisions. But also I had this sort of internal thing going on all the time in my head. I really wanted to do well in the classroom, do well on the sports pitch, but, you know, the culture there wasn't really conducive to that. I actually remember sitting in an assembly in my year 10 year, so in my fourth form year, and I'd just been selected for a New Zealand basketball team, under 16 team. We were travelling up to Australia, and I was getting an award at assembly, and I remember sitting at the back and hearing my name getting called out and thinking, shit, I've got to walk up the aisle. And just walking up the aisle and just hearing all these whispers in the room, this guy's such a loser, he thinks he's the man, you know, all that sort of stuff. And it was pretty bad. So I was sort of starting to try and listen to those voices and sort of step away from things a little bit. And then luckily, my parents decided to move to Christchurch and learn to teach in Māori, actually. So they moved to Christchurch. I went to Christchurch Boys High School my year 11 year. And I remember sitting in my first assembly there, and a guy got a maths award. So he got a maths award. And I remember sitting in my little part of assembly, and all the whispers around me were like, this guy's the man. Like, this guy's so smart. Man, he's so smart. And I just remember thinking to myself, like, shivers. I've just gone from a place that, you know, something that was meant to be cool, sport, and then something like maths that in my head wasn't meant to be cool, and he was, you know, celebrated. And it sort of was a fundamental shift for me, really, at that time of like, actually, I want to delve in here. I want to lean into the classroom. I want to lean into the sports field and really try and push myself and see how far I can sort of go. And it was a start of a few pretty successful years for me. I became head boy of the high school. We won the national title in rugby for a few years. I ended up captaining the New Zealand schools team and New Zealand 19 team to a World Cup. And it was, pretty exciting. And then I signed my first professional contract at the end of my last year at school to sign with the Crusaders for the next season. And in my first year out of school, actually, I was studying law full-time, I was with the Crusaders full-time, and we were about to have my first daughter. So I was like, jumped straight in the deep end first year out of school. But this was sort of where I'm coming to the first sort of learning here. And it's a funny feeling, like when you've watched your heroes forever on TV, and you know, Dan Carter's, Richie McCaws, the Brad Thorns, the Aaron Majors, the Rua Tapukis, guys that were absolute idols of mine one week, and then all of a sudden I'm sort of sitting next to them in a changing room or running out in a stadium in South Africa, playing alongside them. And as an 18-year-old, it was an interesting sort of time. And I guess the big challenge that I faced is I'd had a lot of success through those last sort of 4 or 5 years at school. And so a lot of my identity was wrapped up in being good at things. And the reality was I wasn't actually good at many things. And there was a few things in particular that I really needed to develop to sort of get to that next level of rugby. And so for anyone that doesn't know rugby, so I played in the midfield, and so 12 or 13. So guys that play in my position are big, strong, tough guys. Clearly I'm not that, you know. So, you know, Ma'anonu, Sonny Bill Williams would probably be two guys that you would recognise as being my position. I'm certainly not guys like that. And so for me to be good at rugby, I had to be really good technically. So I technically and tactically had to be very good, especially when anything around the combative side of the game, like the tackle part in particular. And I wasn't naturally a good tackler. So you think of someone who's not naturally a good tackler, you know, not physically gifted, would lean into tackling practice. But I didn't. I was avoiding it like the plague. There was tackle drills going on at training. I'd try and get away from it. And the reason for that, I was just trying to hide that sort of part of myself. You know, I didn't want to be found out. You know, they want to kick this guy out because he's useless. And so that stunted my growth. Like fast forward 10 years, every single opportunity I have to make a mistake, like now, you know, like I hate getting up here and speaking in front of people. I struggle with it, but I'm like, actually, I've got to get out there and do it because it's push myself outside my comfort zone. Because genuinely, if you're prepared to make mistakes, if you're prepared to sort of push yourself and prepared to fail, that's where the growth comes. And I'm sure it's exactly the same in your industry. There's things, a good way for me to describe this would be, like, say that there's a journey you're trying to achieve, climbing up a mountain, and there's an easy track up the mountain. The reality is 90% of people will be on that easy track. They'll be taking the easy route. It's human nature to try and take the easy way. Whereas if you decide, actually, I'm going to go straight up this sharp path here, there's a few things that happen. One is there's less people there. So if there's less people there, there's more opportunity to be successful, just by its sheer nature. If you're doing things differently and you're doing the hard thing, most people aren't doing it, so you have more opportunity to succeed. The second thing is, even if you fail, the learnings that you get from that failure set you up for your next thing. So it's like, for me, that's a skill set. Just like strength or speed, you can develop that skill set of learning to make mistakes or pushing yourself outside your comfort zone. And it's like, how do you do that? How do you develop the skill set of pushing yourself outside your comfort zone, pushing yourself to make mistakes? So it's actually very simple. It's doing something hard every single day. Doing something that you avoid every single day because it stacks up over time. That might be a difficult conversation. It might be making a difficult phone call. But you build that resilience to lean into something hard. The one thing I do every day that I've got control over is when I have a shower in the morning, I look at the handle and I'm like, am I going to go warm or am I going to go cold? I go cold every morning. And it's easier in Auckland than it is in Christchurch. I swear the water down there is way colder. But that for me is like my little training. I'm going to take the hard route every day. And that once again, that stacks up over time, I believe. And for me, it's a super important skill to sort of develop. Sort of 4 years into my career with the Crusaders, I was sort of in a bit of a slump. There was a few things going on, and Liam McDonald actually, he coaches up here now, but he was in the team, and he said to me, look, go and take a year off. I wasn't going to be selected in the 2011 World Cup, and he said, like, go take a year in Japan, get away, do something different, and then come back. So I went and signed with Coca-Cola in Japan, and it was fantastic for us as a family. The girls were pretty young at that stage, and just getting away, you know, on our own, no help. I was more nervous about Japanese, the language, than I was about the rugby, and we just enjoyed our time there. It was fantastic. I did really want to, though, come back to New Zealand rugby and push myself. You know, I was 23 by that stage, and so, you know, I was just sort of coming into my career, really, and so I decided to re-sign back in New Zealand, and I signed with the Hurricanes. And the Hurricanes were going through sort of an interesting period at the time. So the Hurricanes had been sort of the best team in the Super Rugby sort of competition for a long time. They had legions of players, but they'd never won a title. John Olomu, Tana Umanga, Christian Cullen, just absolute legends, but they'd never sort of been able to get across the line. And the coach at the time had sort of tried to reshape the culture around genuine high performance and hard work. And so I came into the team, and myself and a number of players sort of established what it was to be a real professional rugby player, like real hard work, really supporting one another, keeping each other accountable, things that you'd all know should be just inherent in a high performance environment that wasn't sitting there previously. And the guys that we had as the first years in the team that year were guys like Julian Savia, Bowden Barrett, TJ Perenara, and those guys they became high performance. And we genuinely reckon what was established in those sort of few years set them up for massive success down the line. I was playing with the Māori All Blacks through that time and touring all around the world, and it was fantastic. It was really, I was back in the All Black frame, and things were going really, really good for us. It was a pretty exciting time of my life. So Laura and I got together when we were 15 years old, and so we've been together for a long, long time. And so she is the love of my life, we're sort of, it sounds a little bit silly, but she really, really is. And she means everything to me. And a couple years sort of in that period, things started to go wrong, long story short. She was a professional hockey player herself. All her identity was tied up physically and doing well at things as well, would win national cross countries. And she went from that to, she couldn't run 200 metres, lost her vision, lost control of one of her arms, lost control of her bladder. There was a series of things that were happening over a really condensed sort of period of time. And it was really, really difficult for us, and we just had no idea what was going on. It was really tough leaving for training or going to South Africa and knowing that she was dealing with this with our little ones at home. And this image here sort of epitomises finding out what it was for us. It felt like we were sitting in these two little chairs in this room with this neurologist, everything just looked big and scary, and he told us that she had multiple sclerosis and that she's got a really aggressive form, and she's on the track to a wheelchair, and our life was going to be pretty different from here on in. It was a pretty horrible thing to sort of hear, but for us, we really wanted to take sort of control of that, really. And the difficult thing, I'll leave Laura to one side for a moment because it's all about me up here today. The reality is, and I'm sure you guys can all relate to this, how one area of your life impacts the other. If there's something going on at home, how it impacts work, or if there's something going on at work, how it impacts home. And if we're talking about genuinely trying to perform to a high level, we're kidding ourselves if we think that it doesn't impact the other thing. And so that was super frustrating for me. It was super frustrating. Like my performance, if you overlaid my performance with Laura's health, it's like a mirror. It's like when she's doing well, my performances were good. When she was not doing well, my performances were terrible. And you guys are probably sitting there, well, how the hell does that happen? Rugby is just about trying to get a ball over a line. Surely it's all physical. And it wasn't as if I was thinking about Laura on the field, but it was impacting me clearly. It was eating away at me somewhere at my confidence and my mental sort of, just the way I felt about things, the way I could engage in things. And so it was, as I mentioned, it was extremely frustrating. And what I needed to learn was, how can I be where my feet are? How can I actually be where my feet are? If I was to put this into a context of like a weight session, if I can be 100% present in this weight session, I'm going to get more from this session. If I can be 100% present with Shyla at home, I'm going to get more from that conversation with her. And just how do you learn to do that? And how do you learn to be really present? Because once again, that is the key. It's a key part of performance. So for me, that started with meditation. Has anyone ever tried meditation before? Yeah. And keep your hand up if you feel like you fail at it every time as well. Like it's the same. It's the same thing. Like meditation is you're trying to focus on your breathing, yeah? And then all of a sudden you start thinking about dinner or thinking about something else. I'm exactly the same still. But the reality is every time you catch yourself somewhere else, it's like, okay, and you come back, that's like a little rep in the gym. It's like teaching you to be where you want to be. So you might do a 10-minute meditation and have 20 reps, And that's the way I sort of saw it. But once again, the more I did that over time, the less reps I'd have through a session. So once again, it's not the same for everyone. Meditation is not for everyone, but learning to be present, teaching yourself to be where your feet are is a super important thing. So as I said before, we really wanted to take control of things. The medication for Laura in New Zealand wasn't helping at all. In fact, it was pretty rough. And so we decided to travel to Singapore actually and get a thing called a stem cell transplant. And so a stem cell transplant is effectively where they take healthy stem cells from her bone marrow and then blast her with chemotherapy, kill her immune system, and then re-enter the stem cells and hopefully grow a new immune system that doesn't have that same sort of defect. And so she went into isolation for, she was probably in isolation for about 6 weeks in Singapore, and I was going back and forth from Japan with the girls. And so it was a really difficult time, and as you can sort of see, it was really rough, like really, really rough on all of us. Laura a lot more than me, obviously, but it was a brutal procedure. And when she got to the end of it, to the end of the procedure, it was like I was 28 years old, but I knew we needed to be back in Christchurch. We had to be back closer to Laura's family support, It was just, we had to. And so it seemed like a tough decision at the time. Talking about it now, it's a simple decision, but I had to retire from rugby. And so effectively I was in the peak of my career and I needed to retire from rugby. I had opportunity to play at the Blues, the Hurricanes, the Chiefs and the Highlanders, but we needed to be in Christchurch. And they actually had Sonny Bill Williams there at the time, so they clearly didn't need me. And so what would you do in that situation? I'm sure you'd all do the same thing. And so I chose to retire. In Singapore, it's funny when decisions are sort of thrust upon you, you've got to figure out what's next. And so in Singapore, they recommended flotation therapy to Laura and I, just to help manage the stress of what's going on. And flotation therapy, there's probably no one in here that's even heard of it, but it's like you go into an environment, these are pods, this was our first business, where you go into an environment, it's highly dense salt water. And so there's 500 kilograms of salt, 1,000 litres of water, and it's heated to the temperature of your skin. And so when you're lying in there, you can effectively float effortlessly, and you can sleep on the water, actually. The full experience is to have music that plays under the water for the first 10 minutes, that fades out into nothing, and when you're ready, you sort of turn the light off. And so you have no light, no sound, no temperature regulation. You literally feel like you're sort of floating in space. And so in Singapore, the first time we did this, I went into one room, Laura went into the other room, and I had this amazing experience. I sort of transcended to my family home. Laura had a horrific experience, got salt in her eyes, didn't want to push the button because she's naked in her room, and it was a bit of a blow-up. But anyway, we started a business when we got back and sort of leant into that hugely, and I sort of ran that business for 6 months, and then one day I saw a person's name on the booking who was coming in, and it was this guy who was coming in for a booking. I was like, shivers. So I started doing some press-ups. Hadn't touched the ball in a year, and he just re-signed with the Crusaders for 3 years. So I re-signed like a week later, and I re-signed with the Crusaders for 2017 through to sort of 2020. And coming back into rugby, I sort of had a completely different sort of outlook on life, really. I sort of just, my whole career leading into then, I had to go somewhere. I had to keep pushing, whereas I sort of accepted I really wanted to enjoy my time. I just had a different outlook. I'm so lucky to be here. This photo here was, a month after that float that Razor came in for. I hadn't touched the ball in a year, and I ran out, and there was 30,000 people there in Ireland, and it was just, it was a real sense of just loving being there. And I really learnt, I guess, how to enjoy the journey. And I know it sounds like a fluffy nothing thing, but that's all we have. Literally all we have is one chance. You don't want to get through your whole life and never really enjoy it. So how do you learn to enjoy the journey? How do you actually make time to enjoy it? I mean, I'm sure there's some good ideas out here for me, but for me, really, it's about three things. It's understanding who you are. It's understanding why you're there. So I understood my role in the team, and I understood my two I call them personal drivers. One is to push myself, to be my best I can possibly be. The other is actually to help people around me be their best too. And so, once again, by understanding that, I could sort of see the game differently. I didn't play every game for those 3 years. I sort of played maybe 8 games a year, so I was sort of a bit part player. But I actually enjoyed it way more than what I had when I was starting every week. And I guess, as I mentioned, why would you not? Planning time to switch off, planning time to get away from the game, that's super important too. Like for me, actually planning time to enjoy it is important, or else I'm just going to put my head down going all the time. So find ways to enjoy the journey. So my personal drivers, as I've touched on just now, is helping others, achieve things that they want in their life, and pushing myself. And so I really wanted to find a career that was leaning into both of those things. And so in 2019, we launched a business called O Studio, and it's a full wellness centre. I touched on before around how Cloud9, our first business, was helping people feel better, and you always feel like you're the only one going through stress or dealing with health concerns. The reality is everyone's got some battle on their hands, and so we wanted to create more tools under one roof and have like a cool community of people coming together to do that. And so we built O Studio in Christchurch, and then about 2 years into that, we started building the franchise system to scale that around. And so it's really cool. Like, we have hundreds of people coming into each location. We've got 3 locations open at the moment around New Zealand. And our whole goal here is to make holistic wellbeing. I don't like the word holistic. I guarantee there's a few people in this room, when you heard the word holistic, you're like, oh, there's something about that word I'm not sure about, but I can't find a better word. It's your whole self, your wellbeing, your whole self. To what we want to make holistic wellbeing is understood, is accepted, and is practiced as physical fitness. So if you think about 50 years ago, there were no gyms. There was mixed martial arts centres, there was boxing centres, but there were no gyms. And that was because no one really understood the need to go and train physically. Why would I go and lift weights? How's this going to help me? As people became aware of how that could help you physically, then spaces started to open up. For us, we think this whole area of holistic wellbeing. Why would you think about stress? Why do you think about sleep? How can you use heat? How can you use cold? How do these things actually help with performance? And so that's what we're trying to achieve. We've got 11 locations confirmed around New Zealand. So Takapuna is open and operating. Oh, cool, yeah. I actually went in there last night for a communal sauna and ice bath. It was really good. I'm going in tonight as well for a float. And it's exciting. We've got Remuera is opening in January, which is really exciting too. And then we've got, Hamilton, the Mount, a number of others that are opening around the country. And we think there's 20 sort of projected locations in New Zealand that we're sort of working towards at the moment. So if anyone's got any commercial property, that's our big our big handbrake at the moment, trying to find the right spot. But it's exciting, I'm helping business owners create their own business in an area that I'm just so super passionate about, because I know it's something that's helped me significantly along the way too. So one day we hope to sort of grow, and the key thing here is we earn the right to grow with any franchise. We earn the right to grow. So how do we earn the right to grow? The first thing is that our clients get what they're after as they walk in the door, that they walk in the door and they get what they need, that we're genuinely helping each individual as they come in the door. If we achieve that, we're doing a really good job. The second thing is profitable businesses. We need super profitable, financially nailing it businesses. If we don't have that, we're not going to grow. And then the third thing that we really need more than anything is happy business owners. Because there's a difference between being a profitable business owner and a happy business owner. I'm sure some of you guys can relate to that too. So how do we make this something that people really love to be a part of? So I don't want to take too much of your time. So the key things here today for me is just to reiterate. So just make mistakes, whatever that looks like for you guys. If you're not making mistakes, you're not growing. So be prepared to keep on making mistakes time and time again. Learn to be present in the moment. I swear, if you can be more present in a conversation with a client or with a team member, with your partner, or whatever it is, you're going to get more from that conversation, and you're going to perform better in life. And the last thing is enjoy it. Enjoy the journey. We get one crack here. You don't want to look back in 20 years' time and be like, man, I was successful, but I didn't enjoy it. So just on that, if you're wondering what happened with Laura, so they said to us that if she goes 2 years without relapsing post-transplant, that she may not ever relapse again. And it's just gone 9 years, actually, and she hasn't relapsed. So thank you. And so although there was a lot of damage that was done, like she can get halfway around Hickley Park, and we can have a pretty full life at this stage. We do count our blessings, because there's no promises, obviously. And actually, do you know what? There's no promises for anyone in this room either. You never know what's going to come. And the funny thing is, like, when you don't have your health, you want lots of things. As soon as you don't have your health, you only want one thing. So just make sure you look after your health. We do count our blessings every single day. So this is our byline, own the moment for O Studio. It's own the moment. As I mentioned before, life's stacked up of these tiny little moments. And if we can win more than we lose, that's great, but we're not going to win them all. But we can own every single one. So wherever you find yourself, just make sure that you choose to own as many moments as possible. This is us. This is us sort of telling our story as we sort of grow. And if you do want to sort of follow along and sort of see what's going on, then I'd love to hear from you. But thanks so much for having me.